SuperTalk Mississippi media production.
This is Gerard Gibert, and thank you for listening to MidDays here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
MidDays with Gerard Gibert is on the air. MidDays with Gerard Gibert is powered by ceasefire. Power your home or business with ceasefire fiber. To learn more, visit supertalk.fm/ceasefire. Ceasefire fiber powers SuperTalk Mississippi. Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. You're listening to MidDays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to MidDays, SuperTalk Mississippi. I'm your host, Gerard Gibert, along with Rhino in the Element Wealth Studio, guiding you through the middle of your day with facts, fodder, and fine music. Morning there, Rhino.
Howdy, howdy.
So, it seems as if some of those who were inflicted with Trump derangement syndrome have had a bit of a reckoning. They've had a cure. Wow. I'm just blown away. Bill Maher, Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama. No, not quite there yet, is he? It's killing him that he's not the center of this piece. And then Joe Biden, you saw what he said. Well, somebody that wrote it for him, he didn't write it. Something to the effect of, I'm glad we got it finally done. I mean, he's taking credit for staging this historic peace, ceasefire at least. Are you kidding me? What did he do specifically? Can you name anything? The guy didn't know where he was day to day. And, of course, some of the former surrogates of Barack Obama, they're all been out of shape about this as well. Well, it's really not a peace deal. Oh, my gosh. Man, can't we just give credit where credit's due? And by the way, we should acknowledge there are some that shockingly are. Even over there, Morning Joe, MSNBC. I haven't heard from our friend, the race lady, Joy Reid, though. Where is she? She's hiding out somewhere after she got terminated from her $1.6 million a year job over there at MSNBC. She's podcasting, I guess, and stuff like that. Attempting to remain relevant. They can't stand not being in the limelight. You talk about it all the time. We need to come up with some sort of name, some sort of label for that attention disease. Because a lot of people have it, don't they?
I think it's just called narcissism.
Okay. I think in the old days, before social media and 724 television and all the other ways that you can get messaging out and get attention, you didn't notice it that much. I mean, you pretty much had to interact with a person face to face. And you'd say, yeah, they're obsessed with themselves. They're a narcissist. But now we have all these wonderful tools. All the ones that they use that made people rich, that they castigate because of their wealth. Our old friend Robert Wright, she went at it again, sharing some garbage about, some garbage about the inequality. You know what I mean? The billionaires and the concentration of their wealth, 400 of them and all that kind of stuff, more than the bottom half. And I just, every time I see that, I want to say, wait, you're using the tools that produced all this wealth to excoriate them about their wealth. In other words, and I know that's second order thinking, right? Every keystroke that fool types makes all these people wealthier. And, of course, I know a lot of people say, well, that's just Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook, or it's Elon Musk at Twitter and Instagram and all the other cascading tools. No, what they don't get, which again requires second-order thinking, is the myriad of technologies, of resources, of assets, of companies involved in just getting that message on your phone, on your device. They don't think about that. Massive, which is great. It's great, right? A lot of people benefit from this. Oh, well, it's okay. I'm using it to get my message out. Well, now you know, you fool, why they got rich. Because so do a lot of other people. What am I missing here?
I mean, it is a double-edged sword because it has made a lot of people wealthy and it's allowed access to all the world's publicly available information in your pocket. But it's also being thought about as the death of personality.
I totally agree.
Because instead of developing your own individual personality, a lot of young people are coming more towards a amalgamation of avatar and unreality.
Which is why there's been lots of discussion about limiting use of these personal devices in the classrooms, and families have taken upon themselves to implement their own rules within the family. I totally agree. There's no substitute for in-person human interaction. There's just not. This is why I always wonder, why would you want to work from home? I get it if you have a job that you're very far away from your place of business, your workplace. Sure, that's your job. You signed up for that. Account managers, for example, that are out in the field. I had them working for me. It's fine. But, man, if you're local to an office, for example, why would you not want to go in? I mean, if
you're an introvert.
All these people are introverts?
I'm not saying all of them, but I mean that accounts for a portion of them.
Yeah, it does.
Because if you're an introvert, it will exhaust you having to act extroverted. So when you're done with your day after the mental or physical toll of the work itself and the mental and physical toll of acting extroverted to meet society's demands if you're introverted, I could see how it would be a godsend. I can just do all this from home and save all that energy putting on the happy face and small talking at the water cooler.
That's the fulfilling, rewarding part
for extroverts.
Okay. Well, I got to tell you, that's the part I enjoyed the most. I mean, that was the benefit that offset all the unpleasant parts of work, dealing with issues and problems and challenges and all that sort of stuff that we all do, right? But, man, being able to interact with people, see people, have those water cooler break room conversations as we used to have, or go to lunch with them and so forth, walk around, talk, chat, break up the intensity of the day. It's just shocking to me that people, I want to stay at home and be by myself and work in my underwear. I just don't get it. I don't know.
I'm sure you had a lot of programmers that would have loved to be able to sit at home in their underwear programming.
Yeah, maybe so. I don't know. I got to tell you.
You never had a programmer you had to tell, hey, you can't just wear a T-shirt and flip-flops to the meeting.
You know, we didn't really have any kind of strict dress code. We just expected people to apply common sense, honestly. Never got to that point. I told you last week about the one employee I had that was wearing really short skirts. I mean, it was just inappropriate. And I had her boss talk to her. But so I got to tell you, your point is understood, and it is valid. I try not to hire people like that. There are deeply technical people, as you know, that are extroverts. That's the jackpot.
And then you've got that weird crossover part of the population that really doesn't want attention, but they are starved for attention.
Totally true.
They tend to be the ones that show up to these protests in the inflatable outfits.
That's exactly right.
Don't look at my face, but look at my personality, even though the personality is just an adopted whatever.
And that's okay. That's cool. But I don't know. So how about this while we're sort of talking about social stuff? A shocking number of Americans are open to having a sponsored wedding. You heard about this? A survey of 2,000 Americans, which examined people's attitudes towards wedding spending, found many would be happy to consider having their favorite brand contributing heavily toward the bill. I guess like some sort of logo or message on the cake or on the dress.
Wasn't I just talking about the death of personality?
Yes, you were.
People are making brands.
Oh, my gosh. It's just crazy. I don't know. We're stepping aside for a break. We're coming right back with more in the Element Well studio. Stay with us.
So kind, got to tell this world that you're mine, that you're mine, that you went on my thumb. We'll never somebody show us fun. Come on, baby, drive me crazy. Goodness gracious, is great balls of fire.
There's nothing.
This segment of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by Covington County Hospital in Collins, where your health matters.
Check it out. Let's do this.
The talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert
Let's get on with it.
on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Well studio. We got law professor Christopher Green at 11:05, Natasha Srdoc at 12:05 today on Middays. So one of those individuals who says she was once afflicted with Trump derangement syndrome and has now been cured is British actress Frances Barber. And she actually conceded yesterday that she's changed her view on the president. That after his role in brokering a peace deal between Israel and Hamas. Of course, that was reached earlier this week. Quote, "I had TDS and now I'm eating my words." She wrote that on X on Monday, reposting a photo showing a thank you message to Trump, written on a Tel Aviv beach. How about that? Now, the president and his inner circle know this. I'd say that we got to be vigilant. These are people that cannot be trusted. And while certainly, at a minimum, huge celebration over the return of the hostages and the remains. But I saw something yesterday, Rhino. It just crossed my news. These people are continuing to execute pro-Israel individuals. Yeah. They're not stopping that, right? I mean, and so this nonsense, I got to tell you, from the left about the genocide and all that stuff, accusing Israel. Has Israel ever said, yeah, we want to wipe various countries off the planet in the Middle East?
No.
Right.
Especially not in recent history.
What has Hamas said?
From the river to the sea.
Correct. They make no bones about it. They're quite open about it. Their goal is to eradicate Jews and the state of Israel. But yet
now they're just shooting themselves because of suspicions over acting Israeli agents within Hamas. That's who they're executing.
Okay.
Suspected members of Hamas and other Palestinians who they believe were actually Israeli agents.
Unbelievable. And this is where I get so just enraged about the left who constantly throws out this genocide stuff, accusing Israel of engaging in it. How rich is that, considering that we already went through a round of that in World War II, did we not? Was that not Adolf Hitler's goal? Sure, he exterminated 6 million of them. His goal was to rid the world of all Jews. So you got that, and then you got this constant referral to Donald Trump as a fascist and a Nazi and Hitler and all that stuff. Wait, kill 6 million Jews and doesn't want
dudes in dresses
to play in men's sports because they do consider that fascism. Is that not right? They absolutely do. Exterminate 6 million human beings.
They consider anything to the right of a radical femme-Nazi to be
That's
fascist.
True. Well, I think it's good to see so many people coming out with a bit of a mea culpa.
Yeah, I got to be honest. I have no idea who that actress was.
Well,
I looked her up, and I still don't know.
Yeah.
I've never seen anything she's ever been in.
And I did the same. Apparently, she's kind of something in Britain, but I don't know that I've ever seen anything she's appeared in. Bill Maher, had talked about it. Said, I believe if I'm not mistaken, that I didn't vote for him. But I got to tell you, he's done pretty good here. He's done that on his shows, but he, of those on the left, may be the most honest. One of the most honest that will, I think, just sort of frame things more open-minded and clear-eyed. Some of them they can't. But I am pretty surprised at Morning Joe. I didn't see that coming. Really didn't.
I didn't see Hillary coming. I didn't really. Bill Clinton's always been one to play political patty cake and give kudos to the other side, so it didn't really surprise me that he was willing to name Donald Trump. But Hillary kind of surprised me. She's still got a spur under her saddle for that, or a burr under her saddle for that.
Oh, she absolutely thinks that she should have been president. I mean, and it's not just I should have been president, you guys got it wrong. It's, oh no, I'm entitled to be president. That's the difference. You got to say, though, that your heart is warmed when you see these incredibly emotional reunions all being recorded and published in Israel. Unbelievable. There's some on the program, on the TV in the studio right now. Just incredible seeing, in this case, it's a mother and a father embracing their son, and there are numerous examples of that. Just incredible. Incredible. Really is. And, man, you got to feel good about that. You got to be grateful to the president. Now, Kamala Harris, she gave a little bit of props to the president. However, she was very careful not to say 2 words, Donald and Trump. She refused to do that. Well, I don't know if she refused. She just didn't. She referred to President Trump as the president. Never identified Trump by name in the statement. Quote, I am thankful and deeply encouraged that this ceasefire has brought long-awaited moments of joy and reunion as 20 Israeli hostages are finally reunited with their loved ones and Palestinian families, and the people of Gaza begin to receive desperately needed relief from unimaginable suffering. That's the statement from Kamala Harris, former U.S. Vice President candidate for president. She said, I commend the leaders and partners whose efforts made this agreement possible, including the president and his team, but just couldn't bring herself to saying President Donald Trump, could she? Nope. She's another one, I think, that is still somewhat aggrieved by the whole situation. Man, oh man. Let's see what we got here on the ceasefire text line. My system's running a little slow this morning. Mo says, Olive Garden wedding and reception wouldn't be bad. That's good.
I mean, it would make sense to a certain extent to have a themed or sponsored wedding if through serendipity you met your spouse at that location or through the business or something like that. It could have some heartfelt meaning.
Yeah.
I just figure you're going to wind up with some interesting sponsorship choices.
Yeah, that's probably true. You've probably seen the television ad. It comes on quite a bit, and it portrays like a high school graduation, and several of the graduates are sponsored. And when they announce them, they announce a sponsor. And one of those guys owns a tanning booth, and he stands up. It's very clever. Interesting. Speaking of graduation, I heard a report this morning. And this was on the radio. This was on the business channel. A guy named Mike Sorelli. I couldn't find him. I don't think I know how to spell his name. I couldn't find him. But he was talking about something that's on the minds of a lot of people, which is, will artificial intelligence displace lots of jobs? And he said something that was very interesting. He said, and I believe him, that the demand for blue-collar talent is absolutely poised to soar. And as a result, of course, second-order thinking a little bit, when demand is strong and supply is lagging, what happens? You can get more money. So electricians, carpenters, HVAC technicians, guess what? Driven by artificial intelligence. Because you got to have people make that stuff, you got to have people install it, got to have people power it, cool it, support it, build the buildings? Of course. And he actually was recommending, tell your kids don't go to college. Go straight out of high school and get all the skills you need, gain all the skills you need to take one of these jobs, because they're going to be over $100,000 on average. Six-figure incomes for these jobs. I just think it's fantastic. And you know something else? He sent a powerful message to the university community. You better start building some programs around these. Doesn't have to be a 4-year degree, but programs around training people, because all that stuff you're teaching people now, it's all going to be replaced by artificial intelligence. Interesting. On the other side of the break, I'll tell you what Jensen Huang, CEO of NVIDIA, says about this. We're coming right back.
Days with Gerard Gibert
Welcome to our shop.
on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Okay, now you have a good one.
That's Bobby Kimball of Toto on the lead vocals there. Hold the line. So, you know, they were opening up for Journey a couple years ago, and my daughter and son accompanied me to the show. I think that was the one in New Orleans, if I'm not mistaken. And they Toto fired up this song. And my son says, well, I didn't know they did that. He was familiar with the song, you know, and liked the tune, just didn't know that was a huge hit for the band Toto. What a collection of fabulous musicians that band was. The Porcaro brothers in there, man, incredible. Steve Lukather, lead guitarist and lead vocalist, man, still kicking today. Incredible. Think of all the advertising that you could put on the bride's train, says Dan in Hattiesburg. That in reference to a report showing that a large number of Americans would consider having some sponsors for their wedding celebrations. Really is incredible. Pretty neat. So Jensen Huang, the CEO of NVIDIA, he made an interesting observation. The first thing he said about AI and possible job displacement, he says AI is not going to take your job. People using it will. And you were making a great point on the break about even these trades, carpenters, electricians, HVAC people, using AI to complete their various tasks. Totally
because
agree.
I mean, if you can't get enough highly trained, highly skilled individuals, then you can at least get labor into those positions and use AI to assist in the completion of tasks that would normally be completed by a plumber or an electrician or an HVAC associate.
And the best and the greatest value of getting assistance from AI is just shortening the amount of time to accomplish a particular task. When you run into problems or you're just not quite sure how something should be put together, installed, etc., and then boom, you can hit AI, and it can help you with that immediately. Heck, there's a YouTube video for just about any sort of repair or installation or correcting a problem. I go to it for my vehicle. You know, they got all this complicated stuff, and every now and then something will happen. And I know there's a way to do this.
And the best of those are made by tradesmen, people that do it for a living. But it's really they'll take your money if you want them to still do it, but it would save them time and energy, and they could get to more important tasks if you knew how to put the belt back on your dryer instead of having to call out the repairman to come out there and take your dryer apart just to put the belt back on it.
Yeah, totally true. So Wang says, this is an interesting take. He says, we're all going to be manufacturing something. He said, whether you're manufacturing the chips, the servers, the storage, talking about this AI revolution, the racks, you could consider construction to be kind of a manufacturing process, if you will, of a building, of a structure, and everything in it. But he says you may also be in the business of manufacturing intelligence. Makes perfect sense to me, right? So that's kind of the different disciplines that are evolving from this. It's fascinating to watch this unfold. It really is. And one big concern I have, and by the way, I wrote an op-ed about this over the weekend. It should be published here in the next few days, is just we're doing really well in innovation, in creation of these technologies, but we Americans tend to be set in our ways, and we're not as open to change and disruption as some other societies are. It's just the way we're wired. And so adoption is always a challenge. And in the IT world, there are literally companies. We had a small practice involved in that called adoption services. And I know I've shared this before, but I remember back in 2005, right before Cisco made the formal announcement they were buying WebEx, we were involved with the company before that. I can't remember the name of the company, but the inventors of web meetings, web conferencing. That was back in the mid-'90s. AccuTouch, or I don't know, something like that. The name escapes me. But ultimately, Cisco bought them, and they renamed it to WebEx. I think that was in 2007, $3.8 billion. But where I'm going was that we had a hard time getting people to do what we all do on a regular basis now, and that's just meet via the internet. I think COVID certainly popularized that considerably. And onto the scene comes Zoom, which is sort of a less sophisticated, powerful version of what the WebEx founders invented back in the mid-'90s that ultimately became a key part of Cisco Systems' collaboration portfolio. Because not only does it allow web meetings, but it also incorporates their high-definition teleconferencing, just more sophisticated capabilities because it's targeted at enterprises rather than individual users. But nonetheless, we had a hard time getting people to use it. And that's what there are some folks, including Jensen Wang, that are warning about. Other countries are adopting. We're creating it faster than them. We're innovating more, but they're adopting it faster. And this literally could come down to a matter of national security and economic stability as well. Interesting take, interesting times that we live in for sure, and I enjoy just watching it all unfold. Here at home, after this rash of shootings over the weekend, the Mississippi High School Activities Association, the executive director of that organization, recommends banning tailgates on school property for the duration of the year. It's just a recommendation. Also suggest having supervision if you don't ban and increase security. Picayune, they've already said, yeah, we're not going to do it. We're canceling. I think this is if I'm not mistaken, the Picayune School District, if I have that right.
That's what I saw, yeah.
Yeah, they've announced that we're canceling tailgating for the year. And then I'm looking at a report now. This is just released yesterday. The Laurel School District announced they have suspended all tailgating activities until further notice and canceled the annual Homecoming Street Jam. This really sucks, does it not? I'm not blaming these folks for being ultra careful. What sucks is we got these bad people that are causing good people to lose out on precious opportunities. You think about your time in high school. You're a senior, for example. You ain't got but one left, and now you can't do it. That's terrible. I felt the same way during the COVID stuff. You remember that, Rhino? They all canceling everything, which was dumb. Let's don't play baseball, right? You might catch COVID playing baseball. Remember the Ole Miss World Series and several Oklahoma players, as I recall. Remember that? Whenever 22, I don't think they had any symptoms, but they were tested, diagnosed with, and they wouldn't let them go outside and play baseball. And we subsequently learned that was insane. That absolutely had zero. Because we relied on people we should be able to rely on, and they led us astray.
At least one seemingly to cover his own rear end.
Correct.
One, Anthony Fauci.
Yeah. As I like to reference him as Anthony, lock him up forever and throw away the key, Fauci. Because it does seem like that was his goal. He enjoyed that power, didn't he? Imagine that. Anyway, anytime you got somebody that builds like a monument to themselves in their house like he did, I mean, these weren't like accomplishments. This was just him in the media sort of stuff. Unbelievable. Well, nonetheless, it's sad to see that here in the state of Mississippi, because of a few nitwits, and that's being nice, that so many good people are being deprived. It really is. And so I don't know what necessarily the solution is to address this moral decay in our society. I've said before that I happen to believe that dissolution of the nuclear family is a big part of that. And I think the other thing is people on the left seem to try to justify. They do. They justify, they sanction, they validate crime. They coddle criminals. And they vilify victims. I feel like that is starting to manifest itself in society. I felt for a time there back in the 80s, 90s, you remember the widespread gang activity. And it's like that went away, and now it feels like it's returning, just manifesting a bit differently. Of course, there could be some gang stuff going on here. We're stepping aside for a break. It's Middays, Hour 1, final segment is next.
I'm here with David Baroni.
Properly set all controls before recording.
All systems go.
The talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays. That's from the All Hit request line. I made that request on the break of Rhino. Appreciate that. That tune is entitled Empty Garden by Sir Elton John. It is about the horrific murder of John Lennon, the great John Lennon. And what made me think about playing that song was how I was talking in the last segment, how just a handful of people can ruin so many things for a large group of people. And there's a lyric in the song that we just played there, Empty Garden, that's always kind of stuck with me, that makes so much sense, and it goes like this. It's funny how one insect can damage so much grain. That's exactly what we're dealing with here. We got a few insects, although that would really sort of elevate their status among us.
You know, there's a kind
Unbelievable.
of half-hearted debate about the meaning of that lyric.
What is it? What's the?
I mean, it's not really a serious debate. It's more tongue-in-cheek. But
okay.
the tongue-in-cheek debate on that lyric is that he was taking a shot at Yoko Ono.
Oh, really? Yeah, I don't know about that. I don't see Elton doing that, honestly. I can understand how such theories could arise, certainly, because there was always a lot of talk, you know this, a lot of scuttlebutt among the Fab Four that she was causing problems as he started to date, marry her, and so forth. And I think that happens a lot with these high-profile groups like that, where a spouse gets involved, and as they say,
it's not often that a spouse gets involved and demands to be at every single meeting and recording session and perform on stage.
Exactly. And I can see how
be ear-splittingly bad.
No doubt. I would have an issue with that as well, were I part of the group. That's just not appropriate. So I had a friend says, don't underestimate the effect that the end of mandatory military service had. People learn a lot in just a couple of years in the Army. I agree with that. Totally agree with that. I'm not suggesting support for reinstating the draft, but I absolutely agree that, man, you know this. There were a lot of kids back in those days that would graduate from high school knowing that they were just a problem, and would volunteer to straighten their lives out. Just go off and volunteer and say, you know, I'm sort of at sea without a paddle here. I don't really have any direction in life, don't know what to do, don't want to go to college, and don't want to start working. Know that I've maybe reflected on knowing that there hadn't been the best behaved person in their high school and pre-high school period. And so, yeah, I agree that just the discipline imparted on one, which is really what the military is all about, it is a situation where you kind of have to lose your individualism. You have to comport. Otherwise, people die, is the reality. You can't be rogue. That's not to say that you can't empower and should empower people to react and use their noggins in certain situations, but you got to develop that. But overall, there's a chain of command. You better adhere to it, and it's the way it should be. And I think our Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, the War Department there, I think has shown that, to the chagrin of a lot of the social justice warriors that are underneath his purview there, serving in the I know we had some folks that have argued with us about that, but if we weren't right about that, then why did the Secretary have to have this big meeting and talk about these specific changes being made?
And most of those social justice warriors can't really answer for why it's only men who have to register for selective service.
That's absolutely true.
May not be a draft, but you still got to register, or it's a felony.
That's absolutely true. Yeah.
But we're all for equal rights, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Seems like equality would be everybody signs up for selective service at the age of 18.
Well, that's true. I mean, if we can allow
Dudes in dresses.
right to play in women's sports, then shouldn't you same apply here? And by the way, don't water down the standards, right? We don't need to do that because they're equal, right? I mean, they can have babies and stuff. They're super powered. We need more Dewey Oxburger, says Jimbo in Gluckstadt. Also reminded me, Toto opened up her journey in Biloxi. I've been so many times I couldn't remember. Appreciate that, Jimbo. That was February of, was it this past February? I can't remember. Or was it 24? I'm losing track of time here. Nonetheless, it's time for Fox News Super Talk News. We got Christopher Green joining us next. Stay with us. Of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by the Mississippi Business Journal. Visit msbusinessjournal.com. Scott Coopwood, publisher and president.
And now, another hour of the talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Begin your transition now.
Now on Super Talk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's hour 2 of Middays coming at you live from the Element Wealth Studio. We kick off hour 2 with Christopher Green, Assistant Director, Chase Center for Civics, Culture, and Society at The Ohio State University. Professor Green, good to see you, sir. Thanks for coming on.
Good to see you, sir.
All right, so the Supreme Court, they're back at it, right? Tell us how that schedule works. Don't they call them terms?
Yeah, so they have terms. So they're called October terms. The October term 2025. It's always funny because all the biggest decisions get released at the end of June. So you have all this stuff. So like Dobbs was in the end of June 2022, but that was the October 2021 term, and it really so. Basically, they hear oral arguments for kind of week or 2 week chunks, and they start those in October. So you've got an October, a November, a December. Then you kind of got a mid-January, kind of mid-February, mid-March, April, something like that, 6 or 7 different chunks. And then all of those cases, almost all the time, they will decide by the end of June. The exception is where they hear a case and they think, well, let's talk about a different question. So I'm almost always, by the end of June saying, well, these cases are way more complicated than they've appreciated. Let's add some questions. And I'm always thinking, won't they add a question? What do you think about Green's stuff on the 14th Amendment or something like that? Once in a while, they will actually specifically say, we want you to think about some particular scholar's views. But Steve Sachs at Harvard is the guy that they specifically said, we're not going to let Steve come up and argue his own point as an amicus, but the party should be ready to talk about what Steve thinks. So I have not yet gotten to that point of fame, but barring additional questions, they decide it by June. And actually tomorrow, they have a case where they have added a question of their own about the Voting Rights Act. So that tells you that they are particularly interested in that question because they have said, hey, maybe we want to have a pretty serious rethink of voting rights under the 14th and 15th Amendments. They clearly have a number of people interested in that question. But what they're going to say about it is... What specifically, Professor? I mean... when I think and hear voting rights, I always think about that there's some intentional attempt, deliberate attempt to preclude someone from voting. When I think of voting rights, is that happening? Is somebody contending? Is that the nature of this suit? What's at the heart of it? Yeah. So the short answer is no. That's not to say that there aren't people who look out and think we'd prefer that certain folks not vote.
Sure.
I mean, I don't know. In general, I think if you think the justification for having a voting scheme is good government, and you got people making bad decisions, question, should young people be allowed to vote? Do you allow? I probably think my 13-year-old would make better decisions than a lot of folks, but I don't think we want to say, let's let all the 13-year-olds vote. But basically, so obviously, a lot of this really is the fruit of the fact that we really did have large-scale denials of a vote prior to the 1960s until the 1970s. So once the South gets in line with actually stopping the nullification of the 15th Amendment, basically, so the 15th Amendment gets nullified for on the order of 100 years. But then you get a bunch of additional subsidiary questions. So Voting Rights Act of 1965 largely allows black folks in the South to vote again, and it's extremely successful. Lots and lots of folks get elected. Then you get some questions about how exactly these districts are going to be drawn.
Okay.
In 1964, we have a ban on malapportioned districts. So all the districts have to be the same size. That actually gives the legislatures this great opportunity to gerrymander things. It turns out Elbridge Gerry, gerrymanders are named after Elbridge Gerry, and we discovered, they talked to his family and they said, oh, actually it's a G instead of a J. So there have been a number of people who have thought we should change the pronunciation of the word gerrymander. I think these people are a bit nuts. But anyway, we have gerrymanders just for political parties. So, if you've got 26% of the vote of the electorate in a state, and you know that nobody ever moves, well, you can get a majority of the seats and put yourself in power if you're sufficiently aggressive with your gerrymandering.
Sure.
That's kind of standard sort of gerrymandering, and there's all these questions. Basically, it's something the Supreme Court is not getting into because they don't have a good standard. But then there's this other question, racial gerrymandering. And there's federal law speaks in two ways that, to put it charitably, are intention. Depending how you see it, you might see these as just straightforwardly in conflict. So in 1982, we get one of the reauthorizations of the Voting Rights Act, and it puts in Section 2. And there's been some interesting cases about how exactly we interpret it. But basically, this gives a strong encouragement to states to have racial gerrymandering so that, essentially, you create a district in the Delta for Benny Thompson to be elected quite reliably to the House of Representatives.
Right.
You could have systems that didn't have as much of a focus on the Delta population of people in Mississippi, or in different states you have black populations or just various ethnicity populations that are located in different ways. The way we have tended to draw these districts causes a certain kind of local governmental apparatus, local political apparatus rather, to get certain people elected. And then there's a question, well, is race consciousness of this kind even constitutional at all? So since 1993, I think Supreme Court has suggested that race-conscious redistricting is almost always unconstitutional. Well, what about the fact that it's largely required or kind of strongly encouraged under the Section 2? Well, they have finally come to the point where they're going to ask, is the kind of thing that's strongly encouraged by Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act actually unconstitutional? And
okay,
they've teed up the question. We'll find out. So we may or may not find out tomorrow which way they're likely to go. It depends on how open the justices want to be. So it sounds like it's more about.
It sounds like it's more about the redistricting question and issue than it is, I guess, the act of casting a ballot. When I think about voting rights, but that's sort of falls under this umbrella.
Yeah, so the idea is if you're casting a ballot, but you've been put into a pile where your ballot is highly likely to be overwhelmed by the other because you're in the minority in that. in that situation?
Yeah.
Are you having your voting rights abridged?
I got you.
But
see.
but the Supreme Court has added these questions, and whether the state's intentional creation of a second majority minority congressional districts violates the 14th or 15th Amendments to the U.S. Constitution.
Okay.
So,
okay.
Again, even the way they phrase it in this Louisiana, the second district, a majority minority, the idea is like, well, maybe some race consciousness is okay, but not too much. And the law professors who are hoping to teach their students
not too much
rule, their heads are explode.
Oh my
say
God.
Like some, but not too much.
Oh, my gosh. All right. So we were talking yesterday, get your take on this, about a case, I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, that originated here in Mississippi, concerns the distribution of Christian-type materials at the Brandon, Mississippi Amphitheater. And this is a question, I think, that we've seen at least debated and heard in lower courts, right, across the country. It all seems to go back to this violation of church and state doctrine, right, that is so common in our country, and whether or not this does in fact violate that. We got a break right now, but if you can hang around, we can keep talking about this on the other side.
Sure, that'd be great.
All right, we got Professor Christopher Green from the Ohio State University on the line with us. We are in the Element Well studio. Stay with us, coming right back.
The talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
We're rolling. Hit it. Go. Play it.
Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk Mississippi.
When I wake up in the morning, love, and the sunlight hurts my eyes.
We're back with you. We've got Professor Christopher Green from the Ohio State University on the line. So back to this issue, Professor, that has made its way It has made its way up to the Supreme Court. Concerns a case here, filed here in Mississippi, about distribution of Christian-type material at, I guess, would be a public setting. This comes up all the time, does it not, Professor? And it just seems brutally complicated and seems like it's kind of a gray area as far as truly crossing the line and violating our law. And then, of course, isn't there always the issue of what's the spirit, what's the intent of this law? Because it's a fairly straightforward one that doesn't go into a lot of specifics. It says, oh, by the way, here's some examples of that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so the case, I mean, you would, if you have insomnia and you're thinking, I need something to read to get this dealt with, reading about Heck versus Humphrey doctrine.
Okay.
So when do things have to be dealt with in habeas corpus versus just suing somebody about prospective relief? There are some very, very difficult questions about just how you deal with certain cases, basically small time things where you get people in jail for a little bit and then let out, and they want to do it again. But if the court said that they were subject to an unconstitutional restriction, then it would have invalidated their earlier conviction, and the earlier conviction should have been dealt with on habeas. But you can't deal with that anymore because the sentence was so small that you're out. Anyway, there's a bunch of annoying questions about how to set up a remedy. But on top of that, just the underlying question of how do you really, this is a distinction between the purely governmental sphere. And so you have I think the way to think of it, you've got, we sometimes think of, well, there's governmental stuff and then there's private stuff, but there's a whole big area in between, which is, you can think of it as public stuff.
Okay.
So you've got this amphitheater, right? So you've got a stage. Nobody would say that you have a First Amendment right to go on the stage and say, I know you want to do a play about Henry V, but it's Bible time. We're gonna hear about the Bible. Okay? No, you're gonna get Henry V time. This is our stage. This is government putting on a play, and if government were to have an officially sanctioned governmental church service or something, well, that there's certain things the government itself cannot do, acting as the government. On the other hand, you have somebody's private house, and also if you come in somebody's house and say, this is a great looking living room, it looks like you got enough space here, I'm gonna have a church service here, go to your own house. Well, in between that, you've got public spaces. So the classic type public space is public sidewalks, public roads, public parks. Obviously, if you're in the road, you're mainly trying to drive back and forth. But can you hold up a banner next to a roadway? Well, if you're not disrupting traffic, if it's consistent with the equal use of everybody else to use that public space for the same purposes, you can. Okay. So then there's this question of where exactly are these boundaries? You've got an amphitheater, you've got a walkway to it. The theater goers have a right to, not be accosted and made to make it more difficult to get into the theater. Okay, but the mere fact that they don't like other citizens expressing their views on certain things in public, well, that other people got a right to be on the sidewalk too. So there's a bunch of Latin terms that I am inclined to use. So you got the use regium, which is what the government's doing, the use privatum, which is what purely private people are doing, and the use publicum, this area in the zone. And the distinction between them is that's where all the interesting action is. So
I got you.
With these bakers, what is purely private versus what's in the governmental, in the public realm, that's when you can impose a public accommodation duty. And this is kind of the public realm, which is the governmental realm. That voters is fuzzy too.
Well, I don't see. I get your point that maybe getting up on the stage there at a public venue and I guess promoting a specific faith, religion, or something, or some religious message, I can see where that would be problematic. But I don't know, distribution of materials just seems like that is a situation where a person can say, I'm not interested, and just walk away. It's not that so government's endorsing it. Now, maybe the concern is, well, we'd have to let everybody that wants to do this show up. And I could see how that just becomes more of a logistical problem than an endorsement of religion problem.
Exactly. The question is, people have the right to, as a broad principle, they have the right to exercise the freedom of speech consistent with everybody else having the same freedom to do that.
Yeah.
So if you look at a public park, do I have a right to go in and erect a monument? Well, if you did that, the place would look like a miniature golf place. So they had a case saying, no, that's deemed to be governmental speech rather than private speech in a public place. But you really have so one of the opinions had a picture of exactly what this is like. And you have to look, well, is this consistent with everybody else doing that? What if everybody came in? Well, if it's a big enough place, it's got enough space for people to get around. It really depends on the parking and a lot of details.
Yeah.
What kind of protest makes sense? And so there's a lot of difficult judgment calls. In general, when you get that, the attitude of the judge is going to matter, because people who think, well, we really have to leave it to the local officials who know the architecture of this amphitheater better. So some judges are going to be much more inclined to defer. Others are going to say, no, we really want to second guess these folks because maybe they're just trying to get these people away because they find them to be pests.
Yeah.
And maybe they are pests, but the First Amendment allows people to be pests. Freedom of speech under the 14th Amendment. They're citizens too. They have the right to the same civil rights as everybody else without discrimination on the basis of creed. That's the basic idea of being citizens of this country is you get to be annoying. The basic idea maybe isn't just about being annoying, but ideas annoy people. That's why they put Socrates to death. He's like a fly biting the hind end of a horse, and then the tail comes swinging at you. But your job is to annoy people.
We got a couple of minutes left.
Speech,
what else you watching in this term?
There was a big case last week. I think it looks like to be a good First Amendment case for social conservative traditional views on sexual morality. So this was a ban on conversion therapy.
Oh yeah,
that only involves talking. So do counselors have a right to basically explain the New Testament view that people can be former homosexuals? So 1 Corinthians 6:11, such were some of you. So even though the Supreme Court itself had this kind of throwaway line in Obergefell in 2015, says sexual orientation is innate and unchangeable. Somebody who disagrees with that and wants to explain that view to somebody in a counseling situation, it looks like they're almost certainly going to be able to do that. Justice Kagan had a very vehement attack on the law. I thought it was very eloquent, saying this is obviously viewpoint discrimination. It's kind of setting out the situation. If somebody had a different view, they'd be allowed to do it. But if they want to explain how sexual orientation is not innate and unchangeable, they would be subject to these restrictions, given that it's purely speech.
Yeah.
There's no actual action. They're not, getting people signing up for electroshock therapy or something. There are, you look at some of the counselors and you're like, wow, we are really, some of them are a bit extra, but this is purely talking. And there was some question about standing. It looked like Colorado was trying to make the case disappear.
Yeah, it's Colorado,
because
right?
They thought they were going to lose. And it doesn't look like they will successfully make the case disappear, and it really does look like they're going to lose. So some of these First Amendment cases can be unanimous. There was a 1995 case about the right to exclude a gay rights group from a parade, and all 9 justices said, yeah, you can do that. It's your parade. You get to decide your message.
Absolutely.
Even the justices who were super in favor of gay rights, they said, yeah, you can. You've got a First Amendment. They were also in favor of free speech.
I think they got it right.
That was not deemed to be so public.
I think they got it right in that case. We'll see where this one goes. I was a little surprised to find out that Colorado actually has, we got about 20 seconds left, a prohibition against such counseling, right? That's what's being argued
here. It's not that many states have it, and that certainly is part of the reason they're almost certainly going to lose that.
Interesting. Professor Christopher Green from The Ohio State University has been our guest. Appreciate it, Professor. Always enjoyed it, sir. Thank you.
Good talking to you, sir.
We're coming right back in the Element Well studio.
Okay, is everybody ready?
I'm ready. Ready here.
Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Jeff Lynne of ELO, Electric Light Orchestra. Always think about he on the stage there with Tom Petty and Steve Winwood, and of course Prince playing, I think Jeff Beck as well, right? Playing While My Guitar Gently Weeps. maybe one of the best guitar performances of all time. Prince shredding the instrument there on the stage. That was at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction. Man, oh man. Was it John Lennon being inducted? Who was it being inducted? George Harrison? I think it was George Harrison. Check me out on that. Because I think his son was on the stage with him, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it was George Harrison.
Yeah.
That was something. Tom Petty, Steve Winwood, Jeff Lynne, Danny Harrison.
Yeah.
A whole bunch of them.
Okay. Yeah, man, they played that song to a T. Not really sure what the song means, but it is awesome, and Prince goes crazy and shreds it, and Tom Petty keeps looking at him. He says, "You want me to keep going?" You can see like the communication in the body English there, and then he chunks that guitar straight up in the air when he's done. Walks off the stage. He kind of struts off the stage. Nobody knows what happened to the guitar, though. Somebody was up there, I guess, and caught it. What a performance. Incredible. Whew, man, that was something with the professor. It sounds like a busy Supreme Court session, and we certainly have to keep our eye on it, given that there was a case that originated here in Mississippi that made its way all the way up there.
And the one dealing with redistricting originates from our neighbor to the southwest, Louisiana.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And as a matter of fact, we should remind the folks that we do have some elections coming up in the state of Mississippi, some special elections, and that would be on November the 4th. We got special elections, 2 special elections because of seats being vacated, and then we got some redistricting elections. Those are a bit different. The 2 seats vacated, Districts 24 in the state Senate and District 26, the latter held by the now mayor of Jackson, John Horn. That is a hotly contested district. Happens, by the way, to be my district. Though I live in Ridgeland, as you know, part of that district that covers mainly Jackson does extend northward a bit into Ridgeland. Interestingly enough, Rhino, my neighbor just literally to the north by one house is in the other district. So on my cul-de-sac there are 3 houses in the curve at the end of the cul-de-sac. We are in District 26. In all the houses just to the north of that on both sides of my street, which kind of runs north and south, they are in a different district. So, numerous candidates in that one, and that should be an interesting race for sure. A lot of eyes will be on that one. And, of course, given that this is a special election, there are no primaries. So it's kind of a, what do they call a jungle primary election, if you will. Just a general election where all candidates from all parties vie for the seat. That comes up on November 4th. The redistricting elections, some of those, or at least one of those, let's see if I'm not mistaken, or a couple of them I'm looking at, maybe three, are not contested. They were, because these were redistricting elections, there were primaries recently held. And so, according to what I am researching, 3 of those districts, see if you get the same thing, have no opponent. The primary winners advance to the general election. That would be 34. Democrat Senator Juan Barnett looks like he's good to go. He doesn't have an opponent on the November 4th election. He won the primary. Joey Fillingane, Republican, District 41 around the Hattiesburg area, doesn't appear he has an opponent on November the 4th. And then Don Hartness, who defeated incumbent Robin Robinson in a primary, will advance to the state Senate, not having an opponent on November the 4th. District 44 will feature Chris Johnson, the Republican incumbent versus Shakita Taylor, the Democratic nominee. And then a new district, 45, has got Democrat Johnny Dupree and Republican Anna Rush. So that's coming up. And then, let's see, to the north, Michael McClendon will face Chris Hanna, the Democrat nominee. That's in the DeSoto County area. That's the 11th. Oh, pardon me. That's the 1st district. And then Charlie Hoots, the Republican, will face Teresa Isom. That in District 2, that is the result of David Parker, the senator, not running for re-election. So that's coming up. Neil Whaley looks like he will hold District 10. It's in the Oxford area. No opponent coming up as well. So, okay, so I miscounted. There are 4 districts that are not contested. 3 of those will be held by Republicans, 1 held by a Democrat, so no flipping going on there. So it's going to be a busy election day on November 4th in the Magnolia State. Just wanted to pass on that information, and we'll be tracking it as well. So should be interesting for sure. Speaker Mike Johnson says, the Speaker of the House of Representatives in Washington, he says there's no quick fix to Obamacare subsidy boondoggle, is what he calls it. It has become a boondoggle, says the Speaker. It's a subsidy for insurance companies. Louisiana Republican Mike Johnson said, when you subsidize the health care system and you pay insurance companies more, the prices increase. That's been the problem. So if indeed the subsidy is going to be continued, it needs real reform. Well, why not just end the subsidies? Any talk about that? No. It would be political suicide. It turns out that once you give people money, it's really hard to take it back away from them from a political perspective. Now, I completely agree that Obamacare drove up the cost of premiums because of all the various factors we talked about yesterday, stuff that has to be covered and no denial for pre-existing conditions, no community rating, no lifetime or annual caps. Rhino's favorite, I don't want to have to pay for OBGYN services, not going, despite what the left says, not going to have a baby, et cetera, et cetera. But insurance companies are required to pay 80% of their premium revenue out in claims. There's also been a spike in the cost of care, rather substantial. That, too, is to a great extent driven by a couple of things. One is we just keep inventing more care. Everybody wants it and it costs money. 2, we're just not producing the number of health professionals we need to have a truly competitive market, if you will, among healthcare providers. The COVID thing certainly turned that upside down. We had a lot of healthcare professionals, particularly nurses, that just said, I can't do it anymore. So there's a shortage, and that's driving prices up as well. So Democrat leader Hakeem Jeffries on Saturday said in a letter to his caucus, tens of millions of Americans will see their insurance payments increase by thousands of dollars per year in an environment where the cost of living is already too high. That is why we must extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits immediately. So, just wanted to pass this on, though. There's been some discussion about, okay, well, exactly how much. Look this up. I did some math on this. The average annual premiums for coverage purchased in the exchanges, in the marketplaces, $888 a year. Now, honestly, that's less than monthly coverage for the most part for an individual. The estimate, if the tax credits expire, is that the average premiums will double to $1,904 per year. Still a hell of a deal. We're stepping aside for a break. We're coming right back. Stay with us.
Poly up of Mississippi.
It's so awesome! Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Come on, let's get on with the show.
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. So on the 662 on the ceasefire text line, anything on District 24 state website says it's vacant. It is, and that is because Senator David Jordan, as we discussed in the last segment, announced retirement. Data that I have indicates there are 6 candidates, but I think they're all Democrats. I don't think that there is a Republican. This is in the LaFleur County area, I believe, Rhino, District 24, Greenwood area. And Carissa Brown, Jason Colquitt, Everett Hill, Loretta McClee, Justin Pope, Giorgio Proctor, or the candidates for that race that used to be held by David Jordan. It's what I'm saying. So that's District 24. There will be a special election, of course, on November 4th, and then, if necessary, a runoff on December 2nd. Man, that would seem to be hard to get folks out to vote on December 2nd. We'll see. But hopefully, people will turn out and vote. It's important. So
it's easier than the week of Thanksgiving, though.
Yeah, I totally agree. Totally agree. So hopefully folks will get out there. The Mississippi Today, no friend of school choice are they, by the way. They maintain that public education advocate Nancy Loom, she, of course, is heavily involved with and serves in some high-profile position for the Parents Campaign. I like to affectionately refer to it as the Parents Scampaign. Says Mississippi parents aren't buying the pitch for school choice. Really? She's, by the way, the executive director. She says that siphoning public money for private schools would provide no benefit to Mississippi students or taxpayers, and that state leaders should instead focus on sustaining and expanding education gains made in recent years. So this referral to allowing this concept of allowing families to direct state funds appropriated to their student or students in their family to the setting of their choice being described as siphoning public money is untrue and disingenuous. It assumes that the people who have the students in their household that would make this decision don't pay into the system for said education. And that's wrong. They do. Even if they don't make enough money to pay income taxes, even if their income tax liability to the state of Mississippi is a big fat zero, they still pay sales taxes unless they don't buy anything in Mississippi. Pretty sure that if you live here, you probably buy stuff here. And by the way, sales taxes account for more revenue to the general fund in Mississippi than do income taxes. 10 percentage points more, as a matter of fact. So what we're saying here is that school choice says, well, you pay all this money via your sales tax, and likely you're paying income tax too. Although in a few years, we won't be saying that anymore because the income tax is being eliminated. But let's just assume, for argument's sake, They don't pay a dime of income tax, but they pay sales taxes. And so giving them the power to choose the education setting of their choice and direct the money they pay to the government to said setting is not siphoning public money. It's simply empowering the people who pay the damn taxes. Man, I get so mad about this, clearly. And so I can only say here, Ms. Loon, that you believe government dictates are better and restrictions than freedom. It doesn't really matter. I can't emphasize this enough. Freedom always wins every single damn time over government mandates and government compulsion. Every time. And that nugget seems to be missed in this discussion. Oh, no. We'll tell you where to go. We'll tell you what to do. We're going to tell you what you're going to learn, what you're not going to learn. We're going to take care of you. Horse hockey. Give people freedom to make that call. And you know what? If those, whatever education setting they choose, doesn't produce the desired, expected, beneficial outcome, they'll make a choice to do something else. As simple as that. But as long as you restrict them, we'll never know. And if they're doing well, they're thriving under that restriction, well, then they probably ain't leaving. You got no worries. Just deliver a good quality product. You're making the case for it by saying, oh, we made all these gains. I agree. Well, then you got nothing to worry about. Fox News, SuperTalk News, coming up next, and it's Natasha Srdoc. Stay with us.
And now, the talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
That's what I like to listen to.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert. Here on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Winter is here again, oh Lord. Haven't been home in a year, oh Lord. I hope she holds on a little longer.
Welcome back, everyone. It is Middays. We are coming at you live from the Element Wealth studio. We thank you so much for joining us. It's now Natasha Srdoc, co-host America's Roundtable radio program, co-founder International Leaders Summit. Hey, Natasha, good to see you.
Hi, Gerard. It's great to be back with you on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Absolutely. So it has been an historic week with the president achieving something that most said was just simply not possible, and that is, at a minimum, a ceasefire in the Middle East region and in Gaza, and a return of these hostages. I've been talking on the program this morning. Just the video is incredibly emotional and so moving to see these families being reunited. Can you imagine the nightmare they've lived the last couple of years? This is just so gratifying to see.
Yes, I mean, it's really so emotional, so joyful, hopeful. They're back after 2 years of captivity, deprived of food, of healthcare. They were brutally beaten. I mean, they had just horrible conditions that they lived in for 2 years. So after 2 years of captivity, to see them reunited with their mothers, fathers, sisters, brothers, with their spouses, it's just amazing. It's so emotional. It's so beautiful. And as you said, there's no one else that could have done it except for President Trump, Donald J. Trump. And this is a legacy, starting with the Abraham Accords, looking for the peace and prosperity in the region. It was unfortunate and terrible that Hamas attacked Israel on October 7, 2023. And now 2 years after, we're back to where we were supposed to be. If the Abraham Accords were continued with Saudi Arabia joining, and if we had had a different administration. So there was no one else who could have done it except for President Trump. And everyone sees that.
Yeah. So, Natasha, I know that, and our audience does, you are very much a student of international affairs. You're extremely familiar with and proficient of the dynamics of the area. With that as a backdrop, my question of you is this going to be lasting peace? Can we expect this to stick?
Well, thank you so much for your accolades. I believe it can stick if everyone looks at peace and prosperity. As the Abraham Accords showed us with United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Morocco, Sudan coming together to normalize their relations with Israel. And it was actually Saudi Arabia that was getting closer to signing the Abraham Accords for peace and prosperity in the region. So we have Arab partners that are very much looking forward, their families, and they're very much for peace and prosperity. Iran is out of the picture because it was Iran that was funding Hamas, Hezbollah, and Houthis who attacked Israel. And that's how October 7 attacks started. That's why we had these 2 lost years with the war that Israel waged on Gaza, actually on Hamas terrorist group. Yeah. So Iran is out of the picture. Hezbollah is non-existent. Houthis are diminished. Hamas is disarming now. Iran, as I said, is out of the picture. Syria is different. So there are no bullies in the Middle East. So without having bullies around and Saudis and Arab partners coming together, including Jordan and Egypt and Turkey, for peace and prosperity, then you see all European leaders, that even those that recognize Palestine, which was not done in the right moment, I would say, how they did it. They wanted to appease their own constituents because there are lots of Muslim potential voters and communities that just immigrated illegally, like 10 million illegal immigrants came into Europe. So they are appeasing their constituents, their voters, their communities. And at this stage, when it came to establishing the peace, they came along. So all of them are for peace and prosperity in the region. A peace accord was signed between Hamas and Israel, and I think it could be long-lasting because one clincher that I recognize in that 20-point deal is that Hamas was allowed a safe passage. Yeah. So basically, they have to disarm, and they get amnesty and a safe passage for those that want to leave Gaza and for those countries that want to accept them. That's a question.
So the president, I think, largely was successful here because of his business background. And he thinks in terms of action, doesn't accept the status quo, doesn't accept the idea that, don't even waste your time, it's not worth it. He's a builder, he's a creator, he's a constructor. And I think he applied those simple principles in negotiating from a position of strength and accepts and recognizes the strength he has as the commander-in-chief of the most powerful nation on the earth. And something else I think just he has brought to the table here in his visit, you remember this back in the spring, to the region, that was mostly around commerce and business. And he secured major investments from Qatar, from UAE, from Saudi Arabia. It seems like, Natasha, that at least those countries and maybe Egypt and some others in the region are trying to figure out, we can have a much higher quality of life if we focus on producing and building and creating and prosperity and business than tearing stuff down and killing people. We just still got some holdouts in that respect. Iran, for example. Maybe we're starting to see a change.
Yes, I'm certain. I mean, it's sure there's a change. It's a new dawn in the Middle East. And even in this 20-point plan, you can see that, international community, all these countries are just coming so close to be part. They want to be part of the Board of Peace that President Trump will be supervising the redevelopment, the reconstruction, actually, of the Gaza Strip. And there are so many Arab countries that you said actually invested, that he had a commercial trip to the Middle East. I mean, they are willing to invest their money into Gaza and replicate Dubai. Dubai was nothing 20 years ago. They made a city out of nothing, out of the desert. They know how to do it.
Yeah.
And that's what's going to happen. And when you said, President Trump is a businessman, is an entrepreneur. You are, Gerard, you are a businessman, entrepreneur. And people like that, and I was, at my time, many years ago, I was also an entrepreneur. We fix things to move forward. You fix things to, you want a solution and you get to another problem. It's not that we want to perpetuate the problem because bureaucrats do that, because that's their job. What they're going to do if they fix the problem? I mean, they have to, the new solution is, it's not that they are in business of finding solutions for the sake of it, like entrepreneurs are.
Yeah, that's totally true. I mean, and as an entrepreneur, as you know, you either do that or you don't eat. It's what it comes down to. It's not like you got to worry about an election in 4 years and you can just kind of subsist in the meantime. But yeah, it's incredible. So, what are you hearing from people that you have contact with in the region and across the pond there, Natasha, about this historic peace deal?
Yeah, I mean, it's surreal, and there's so much joy and hopefulness, and it's beautiful. They sense that peace is possible, and I mean, it's just so emotional. It's on one side, it's so emotional because hostages are reunited. They know that there is a long way to recovery because of rehabilitation and their conditions, health conditions, not just physical but mental. But most importantly, that everybody is coming together for the peace and prosperity in the region.
Yeah.
And I think that's so hopeful. So it's that it's victory for the Middle East and for, as I said, peace and prosperity. Let other countries come and normalize their relations with Israel and have the Abraham Accord signed by many more.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's just so rewarding and so gratifying to see. And then the president, like I said, while he was over there, made his way to Egypt yesterday and really just enhancing diplomatic relations. And, he was talking about some business deals as well while he was over there. So this is just all good stuff. We got a couple of minutes left. What else is going on in Washington from your perspective? I know that's where you are.
Right. Well, we still have a government shutdown, as everyone knows.
Yeah.
And no one knows exactly when it's going to end.
Yeah.
There's some permanent layoffs that are taking place. And there's actually in the halls of Congress, you can hear that Schumer actually blocking opening of the government. So Democrats are at fault, obviously. And that he's allegedly waiting for this protest. No King's protest.
Yeah.
So that to show how he is strong and he wants his his reputation to go up because AOC is breathing again
No doubt.
at his back. So take it right. So we'll see how this is all going to go through.
Appreciate it, Natasha.
But when you see
always good talking to you. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it. We'll talk soon.
Thank you so much, Gerard.
You bet. We're coming right
Talk
back.
soon.
Yep, in the Element
Bye-bye.
Well studio.
For a flipping good.
We interrupt this program.
Gerard Gibert.
Here we go. This is huge. Huge news. Huge news. Huge.
You need to listen to this.
Middays with Gerard. SuperTalk, Mississippi.
We're back with you in the Element Well studio. It's Middays. So the Mississippi Democrat Party issued a press release this morning entitled Mississippi Democrats, federal education cuts threaten students, schools, and our state's future. They thrive on fear-mongering, do they not? And they've got this really clever chart, this graphic, if you will, that where they at least attempt to convey the effect in various categories cutting the Department of Education harms 43 million college students. This says college students borrowing loans. Huh? Borrowing loans? This is official press release. You don't borrow loans. That's not proper grammar there. I'm being picky, I know. But you should have enough people to check that kind of stuff. I make mistakes too when it comes to that. But I don't have people checking all my work all the time. 5 million low-income Pell Grant recipients are affected, they maintain. 93% of all first-time students receive some form of financial aid. Therein lies the problem, Rhino. 78% of all Pell Grants go to students with families who make under $40,000 per year.
Is there any college, university, or school of higher education that is currently enrolling students for classes?
Right now?
Yeah.
I'm not sure when enrollment is available. But
because I'm fairly certain you got to have your financials figured out for the semester long before October 14th.
Okay. I would agree. And that would also apply to, given schools that are on a semester system, that would apply to next year, next semester after Christmas as well. Last year, roughly 41% of Mississippi college students received an average of $5,500 per year through Pell Grants. So this is all about being aggrieved at the reduction of Pell Grant money. Nearly 14,800 low-income students in Mississippi received roughly $9.5 million in additional support through the Department of Education, supplementing educational opportunity grant for students who demonstrate exceptional financial need. I'm sure that's completely accurate and error-free as well, right? 1 in 3 of all undergraduates received loans provided by the federal student loan program, an average amount up to $11,700 a year. So given that taxpayers are funding said loans, should we not have a little bit more control and influence over the coursework said loans are funding? Because a whole lot of it, as we've talked about many times, goes to just worthless studies. Totally worthless, as in, what the hell are you going to do with that information once you graduate? And you've seen some of these crazy majors that we have. And it's worse in some institutions than others, of course. They go on to say that these people get better paying jobs and they increase the annual GDP in our state by up to $63,000 per student. That just sounds a little excessive. But though I totally agree that receiving a college education certainly increases your prospects for gainful, productive employment, depending, of course, on what other skills you may have. But if outside of, we were just talking about the sharp demand in the trades, where I don't think we can produce enough people, honestly, to take on the work that is in front of us there. The fact is, should we be supplementing all this and funding all this with taxpayer money? It's a question. Now, people will argue, well, taxpayer money pays for K through 12 education. That's right. That is the purview of government, the K through 12. Higher ed, little different story there. But I don't know. This just feels like a bunch of fear-mongering. And I noted that I talked about this a couple of weeks ago, actually a week or so ago. The U.S. Treasury just issued their report for the fiscal year for the federal government, which ended September 30th. And the news wasn't good. The deficit, despite the so-called DOGE cuts, despite couple $100 billion of tariff revenue, $1.8 trillion deficit. And when you exclude, it's hard to explain, but it's a one-time accounting gimmick concerning student loans. It puts us closer to the $2 trillion mark. And that is a couple $100 billion over the prior year, 2024. And it doesn't look like there's any slowdown in that, anything that's going to change that trajectory at this point. But I just wonder, once again, when do we ever say no? We can't afford it. So on the ceasefire text line, people have a budget for the $800 premium, so having to pay double is still a good deal, but we have money to send to Argentina. Man, the brainwashing there. Really? So
that's the same worthless midwit
I see it.
that thought secondary education was college.
Yeah, I think that ignores financial reality for a lot of people where, honestly, $20 a month can be a problem. And it depends on the situations, for sure. But this whole idea with Argentina is crazy in my view. Look, the fact is, if you want to talk about we don't have money for this, we don't have money for that, given that, as I've explained, 46 cents of every dollar spent by the federal government outside of Social Security and Medicare is borrowed, you could argue we don't have money for any of it, unless you consider having money, borrowing money. But I think most people would say, no, we should live within our means. We shouldn't have to borrow money to make ends meet. Well, we're borrowing $2 trillion a year right now, which is roughly 30% of what we spend. Imagine operating your household on that same model, using that same model. It's not sustainable, obviously, and it's just still unclear when this whole thing may become a serious problem in America, as far as just the long-term deficit spending and the piling on more debt. But what really bothers me, Rhino, is when people start talking, honestly, on both sides of the aisle about spending money on this versus that. Like, that doesn't really matter because you're borrowing money either way. It's not
My argument would be that it doesn't matter because you are not owed the sweat of someone else's brow.
Completely agree. 100%. This is why this notion that the Democrats like to promote that health care is a right is nonsense, because health care is a service. Could include, of course, products, goods as well, produced by others. You don't have a right to their work product. And it doesn't work, as we know, as evidenced by other countries where it is a legal right. But don't we have to go back and reference our founding documents, appreciating that says right up there up front in the Declaration of Independence that our rights come from our Creator? I don't think among those were life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I don't think there was another colon in the series that said health care. Therefore, it's not a right. Could they being the Congress, the President, enact legislation that would make it a right or legally available to everyone? Sure. But then you get into the nuance of, you're talking about insurance, you're talking about health care. How can it be a right in a country, you talk about this all the time, such as Canada or the UK, where they do have universal government-provided health care, except you can't get it? So how is that a right? Is the government abdicating its responsibility if they're not fulfilling what they enacted into law and said, you have a right to this? By the way, come back in 6 months, as you like to say, for that x-ray? Well, how the hell is that a right? That's why it's not. That's the point. Unbelievable. Stuff that comes from our Creator, life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. Yeah, we don't need government involved in that other than to protect that. That was the whole idea of our founding. Do we have to go revisit that, remind people of that?
Oh, I'm almost certain this texter would say that the founding documents were racist because they were written by racists.
I gotcha. Oh, well, that's why this is the wealthiest, most powerful nation on the planet. Coming right back.
Gerard Gibert. Going beyond the headlines, breaking down the stories that matter to Mississippi. Middays with Gerard on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Ever since I was a young boy, I played the silver ball. From Soho down to Brighton, I must have played them all. But I ain't seen nothing like him in any amusement hall. That deaf, dumb, and blind kid sure plays a mean pinball.
That wouldn't be politically correct nowadays, would it?
I don't care.
Neither do I. Great tune, though, isn't it? Brian in Clarksdale says, how are we the wealthiest country in the world when we owe trillions in debt? So, Brian, don't forget there's an asset side of the balance sheet, right? So when you compute your personal net worth, a company's net worth, the country's net worth, you have to take into consideration the assets, subtract the liabilities, and that equals what would be considered your net worth. It's just a very simple accounting 101 balance sheet structure. So you're right. The country has 38 trillion now of debt. Talking about federal debt, that's absolutely true. But I will share a little bit of data for you. It is estimated that the total assets in the United States, we're talking about businesses, households, governments, $270 trillion. Total liabilities, that would be debt, households, businesses, government, 145 trillion. So our net worth's 124. That's why. That's just a measurement of net worth. Then another measurement of wealth, often pointed to, or certainly just economic performance, is just gross domestic product. So you were pointing out on the break there that the GDP of Mississippi, the gross domestic product of Mississippi, last time I checked, is about $150 billion a year, is larger than what are considered the really wealthy nations in the EU. Isn't our GDP larger than Germany's, I believe, right?
Yep.
With less population. So you got less people churning economic activity.
And remember, Germany is the producer of cars like BMW and Mercedes.
Typically viewed as kind of the economic pinnacle in the EU. It always has been. Just the industrial might of the German nation. So that's how, Brian. Look, that doesn't excuse the fact that I have concerns. We should all have concerns about the government's out-of-control debt trajectory. And that mainly affects us in the form, by the way, of inflation more than anything else. I personally don't think we'll ever pay a dime on it. And the other thing that starts to kick in with this constant ramp up of our debt is just investor fear. And they get a little shaky. And why is that a problem? Because they don't buy our debt, which we need to operate. That becomes a problem. You've seen gold spike. Over $4,000, and of course, it as is always the case, there are buyers and sellers. There are some who think, "Oh yeah, it's going to fall down to 2,000." There are others that say, "No, it's going to 7." So that's why there are markets, different opinions there. But one thing that does concern me is that when you see a spike in gold, that typically means investors have concerns about the future economic trajectory. And that often foretells of a recession, honestly. I hope that's not the case. I'm not saying that it is. But historically, when you see a run-up in gold, that usually precedes contraction in the economy. Now, today, by the way, there's a market sell-off across the board, and that is largely due to China once again retaliating on tariffs. And now they're flexing their muscle on the precious metals that we import and the whole world honestly uses. And this is becoming a problem. And China knows that, unfortunately, we need lots of these rare earth materials. In the U.S. here, we rely on these materials to the tune of about 50% from China and a good bit from Russia, who's also a foe. Now, honestly, Rhino, I'm not familiar with a lot of these materials, and I'm a little surprised to see how long this list is of all the stuff, all these stuff that comes out of the ground that we use in making so many other finished good products. Rhenium, never heard of that. R-H-E-N-I-U-M. Vanadium, V-A-N-A-D-I-U-M. Now, some of these things I've heard of, obviously tin, magnesium, iodine, tungsten. I've heard of all that. I think most people have. Bauxite, iron oxide, zinc, platinum, diamond, stone, potash. Just looking down the list here, some of the stuff I've never heard of. Yttrium, Y-I-T-R-I-U-M. So it turns out that, like some of these I'm just naming, arsenic, asbestos, 100% of it in this country comes from China. So China's saying, okay, Mr. President, you're going to stick these tariffs on us. We're going to raise the prices of all this stuff. And that's got the markets nerved out. So my hope is that the president and Xi Jinping can work something out and put this China trade deal to bed. We'd all be way better off. And there's no doubt that they, of all the countries, I think, take advantage of this country the most, mainly because they manipulate their currency.
I still maintain that we have the one leverage point that could bring the entire semiconductor industry to heel.
What's that?
And it's in Spruce Pine, North Carolina.
And?
It's the ultra pure quartz that's mined in Spruce Pine, North Carolina. It's the only place in the world that has high enough quality pure quartz to be used in the manufacture of semiconductors.
How about that? Okay. Well, that's
so
good
China
to know.
can have all the antimony and yttrium it wants.
Yeah.
Their goal is to beat us in AI and quantum computing, and they can't do that without Spruce Pine, North Carolina.
100%. Well, then I hope the president's listening. I'm sure people in his inner circle are aware of that, and maybe that's part of his chess game, that's coming. I just want to see the war stop, the trade war here. And let's...
It can be argued that China fired the first shot of the trade war by limiting those very precious metals and rare earth materials before the tariffs were even considered.
Agree. Absolutely.
To try to flex.
That's absolutely right. And the president knows that, and this is how he responded. So I would have loved to be a fly on the wall. Oh, prior to that, the person that was talking about the $800 premium going up, still a good deal, but we have money to spend. Argentina says, no, would not say it was racist, but you can't pick and choose what you want to follow. Thank you for remembering me, Rhino. I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall to hear what you said about me off air. Nothing. I mean, it's ridiculous. Don't think so highly of yourself that we would spend time talking about you off the air.
I believe the phrase I used was worthless midwit, which means I value your opinion less than what Porch Cat left in the litter box this morning.
Every time the U.S. on the ceasefire text line, the U.S. does something, China does it back to us. When will it end? And that's exactly what I was saying. We kind of have a tit for tat tennis volley going on here in this trade war that I really do hope comes to an end. It's not good for this country. It's not good for the world. Obviously, we want it to end in a way that is fair and fixes some of the problems that we had. And I know that's the president's goal as well. So hopefully we can get that going. How many of those businesses and houses does the government own to be able to count toward the country's net worth? Not many, like not enough to even get on the scale. Honestly, that's That's CC in Saratoga. That's just really not that big deal. Shawaski Young spoke at our Smith County Republican Party, says Larry and Mize. I think everyone was really impressed. I know I was. He's been on the show a few times as well. KC says Moss Point School District spent $25,000 per student in average daily attendance in 23-24 school year. Last year, 38% of students were proficient in math and 34% proficient in language arts district-wide. There has to be better options for those parents, students, talking about school choice. And my pouncing on the parents' campaign in Mississippi Today for saying, yeah, people don't want that. Thank you for that, KC. And so clearly the point there, as you know, Rhino, is more money ain't the solution. That's not going to change those outcomes. Not one freaking iota. No doubt about it. Something that Ben said earlier, said, y'all touched on home buyers a bit yesterday. What's your opinion, Gerard, on a ban for companies like Blackstone buying homes and getting into bidding wars with Americans? That's really somewhat of a ruse, Ben. Blackstone's been buying rental property. With respect to single-family homes, they own 58,000 out of 85 million. Peanuts, nothing. Coming right back.
Patriotism is a...
Gerard Gibert. He keeps his classified documents right where they belong. Inside a Journey record jacket from the 1980s. Gerard Gibert, SuperTalk, Mississippi.
These eyes cry every night for you. These arms long to hold you again. The curtains on me, yeah, and I will never be free.
That's Burton Cummings and the Guess Who before the mustache. What a great tune that is, with Randy Bachman, as he calls himself, from Bachman Turner Overdrive. They collaborated on the production, the composition of that fantastic song. And, of course, that's Burton Cummings on the keyboards, also handling lead vocals with Bachman on the lead guitar. Great tune.
Yeah, that song got a shot in the arm in the mid to late 2000s. I forget what year it came out. The movie Superbad came out, and the awkward teens went to an adult party, and one of the teens wandered into a room where there was some less than savory looking individuals in the room, and he awkwardly sang These Eyes to them, and they loved it so much that he became kind of the life of the room.
What a great tune, man. That's so good. Appreciate that. So, let's see. Who was it that said it? Was it Thomas and Greenwood said we should sell, or wanted to know about selling see if I can find it here, the national parks? Was it him?
There were a couple of texts about it.
Okay. Yeah, and that's the Trump administration's actually talked about that. It's hard to say what kind of money, what kind of price tag that would
DJ
fetch.
and Summit, if some government land sold, how much money that creates.
And again, that has certainly been discussed. But here's the thing: you gotta think about the economic output that you would lose. So you got lots of visitors, pay lots of money, contributed about $56 billion to the U.S. economy next year, and that's every single year. Once you sell these properties, unless you come up with some sort of royalty feature, and there are 415,000 jobs, believe it or not, supported by the national parks, $19 billion of labor income.
I wouldn't be in favor of selling the national parks, but there is a pretty sizable chunk of federally owned land out west that's just sitting there not being used.
That's right. But it's hard to say what kind of money it would fetch. I seriously doubt it would come close to being the $38 trillion of debt that we have. That, by the way, keeps incrementing. So you're chasing your tail. Okay, look, we sold some land. Let's go pay the debt off. Oh, we just had $2 trillion a year. So here we go. The spiral continues out of control. So let's see. Yeah, Ben, the whole Blackstone thing, he asked about that. That was overblown. And during the COVID era, when you had 2% interest rates and the whole world was out there buying houses, that there was more competition that everybody felt. You saw the stories. Remember that, Rhino? Yeah, we put it on the market. An hour later, we had above asking price in hand. What they have been focusing on, Blackstone, because they're in the business of investing and making money, is rental property in areas where the population is growing. That's been their focus, not single-family homes. A little bit for rental purposes in those areas because a lot of people are moving into those areas, but I think that's just grossly overblown, honestly, when you look at the figures, the true numbers.
Don't they also have a subsidiary that offers the lease-to-own option for housing?
I believe they do, and that, I think, is...
That's kind of rare nowadays.
It is. I think it's through an acquisition they made of a company who was engaged in that exact business. So, I remember, I want to say when I bought my first house in 1981... What the heck was that called? There was some sort of program like...
Yeah, I found it. It was 2021. They acquired Home Partners of America.
That's it. Yep, exactly. And look at the time period, the COVID era, right? They were seizing on that opportunity. No, BlackRock, not that. That was on the ceasefire text line. Not as involved in that. It's a little bit different situation. Thomas says Republicans run on cutting spending and reducing the debt. So if we wipe the debt, Republicans won't add to it. I don't really hear that much, honestly. I hear them talk about fiscal responsibility, but they always point fingers elsewhere. So what else have we got here that before we get out of here? Let's see. Oh, well.
Mind the moon from the 662.
There you go. All kinds of thoughts about that, no doubt. Well, we are out of time here today. Tomorrow I'll be attending the state AI task force meeting on the Mississippi Gulf Coast Community College. Back with you Thursday and Friday. Stay safe and God bless everyone.
SuperTalk Mississippi Media Production.